Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Young here and welcome to another Metal Gear Solid 5 news update. It has come to my attention that YouTube user Python has uploaded a counter video to go against my counter video of his original video, theorizing that the new big boss we see in the new Phantom Pain footage is actually Grey Fox acting as a big boss double. Well, here's my second reply, and before you proceed, I do recommend you watch my first video to get an idea of what this is all about. Anyways, there is a lot to talk about, so let's dive right into it. Python first responds by pointing out what I said in my previous video, stating that Grey Fox was rescued before the events of Peace Walker. Their response is that Grey Fox was rescued after Peace Walker, since otherwise Grey Fox would have been featured in the game. I will admit the word before just kinda slipped out of my mouth without much thought, but the fact is, all we know about Grey Fox's rescue from Vietnam is that it happened sometime in the 1970s, and that is according to what Grey Fox said in Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. The fact is, we don't know when exactly he was rescued, and it's weird because he says his rescue happened after the Vietnam War, which ended on April 30th of 1975, so the forced labor camp Grey Fox was rescued from were established sometime after that, but Metal Gear Solid 5 seems to suggest that Big Boss should be in a coma by then, although who knows, maybe Camp Omega is not the only location we'll get to visit during the prologue chapter of the game. Perhaps one of Ground Zeroes' mission will take us to Vietnam to rescue Grey Fox before shit hits the fan and Big Boss falls into a coma. This leads us into the hospital scene, which seemingly features a third character behind the camera. Their assumption is that the third character is Grey Fox, but then I pointed out that in this game trailer's interview, Kojima states that the man behind the camera is simply himself looking into the game, and their reply to that was, "You clearly don't know who Kojima is yet. He's the master troller in the gaming industry." Basically, they're saying Kojima's lying. Okay, first of all, Python, please don't act like you know the man, because God knows what Kojima's thinking. I may clearly not know him, but neither do you. Second, I really want to touch upon this excuse everyone's making about not being able to rely on anything Kojima says. Look, yes, Kojima's been known to lie, but he tells way more truths than lies. He only lies about certain things, and the fact is, we don't know what he's going to lie about and when, or if he will at all. The only statements we seem to mark as lies are the ones that we don't want to accept or agree with. If we are going to be this paranoid, we might as well say that the game's themes being race and revenge is obviously a lie, or hell, maybe this entire game isn't even a Metal Gear Solid game, it's just a giant cover-up for a Zone of the Enders game. Look, I don't care if Kojima lied before, the fact that there's a chance that what the game creator is saying is true already makes his words more reliable than any theory from any fan. So Python's reply that Kojima's been known to lie and stating that he's obviously lying in this game trailer's interview as if it were a fact, yeah, that's not gonna cut it. Now, if that's not the response of a true analyst for you, Python, my apologies, but I'm gonna use what's already there rather than pretend like I know Kojima so well. Their next response talks about this human head image resembling Grey Fox. I said that this human head cannot be Grey Fox since he has brown hair and not blonde or gray, and that the scar is far too big to match the debris, and the response was it was a work in progress. Well, if it is a work in progress, the entire model just isn't very reliable for anything now, is it? And they also mentioned that Grey Fox and Metal Gear 2 had brown hair. Well, did you know that Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake was actually re-released at some point? Did you also know that one of the big changes was that many of the character portraits were redesigned by Shinkawa himself to match Kojima's vision better? Grey Fox's portrait changed from this actor lookalike to this original design, and as you can see, Grey Fox's true Shinkawa design has gray hair, so their argument using this old portrait is invalid. Their next response concerns the eye color of this big boss, who is supposedly Grey Fox in disguise. They previously said their eyes looked almost the same, to which I said, no they don't. I said Grey Fox has gray eyes, while this man, who to me is the original big boss, has eyes that seem green, perhaps due to lighting, but could just as easily be blue. Their response is that I, Young, can't know for sure that Grey Fox's eyes are gray. Come on, every time we've seen Grey Fox, his eyes have always been gray. And yes, I know that Grey Fox is known to have gone through many modifications, resulting in the cyborg ninja from Metal Gear Solid, but we are not even close to getting there yet, and honestly, the simple answer is that Grey Fox has always had gray eyes when we see him. There's nothing much to it. Moving on. Their next response talks about the ponytail. They talked about how weird it was that Snake was rocking a ponytail, which he has never done before, to which I replied, there's no reason to make a big deal out of it, it's just a ponytail. I also said that Snake could just be wearing a ponytail because it's freaking hot, and apparently that's not the answer of a true analyst. I don't know if that's a thing, but my apologies, Python Salkin. They also replied that the ponytail has nothing to do with it being hot, since in this footage, Snake is wearing a ponytail inside what seems to be Mother Base, which never had a problem of being hot in Peace Walker, since Snake never wore a ponytail in that game. Well, first of all, this isn't Mother Base, it's likely Diamond Dogs. Mother Base has already been obliterated. The footage we're looking at here is after Big Boss wakes up from his coma. As proof, you will notice that Kaz is wearing that hat with a Diamond Dogs insignia, and my personal theory is that Diamond Dogs is established in Africa, since that is also where Outer Heaven is established. And as you may know, Africa is hot, so why not wear a ponytail? And honestly, even if the ponytail has nothing to do with it being hot, it's just a ponytail. Going crazy over this is like going crazy over Solid Snake having a mustache in Metal Gear Solid 4, which he never had before. People get different looks over time, it's really not a big deal. Moving on. Next up is the eye patch. In this first video, they pointed out how Gray Fox from Metal Gear Solid 1 has a blank right eye like it's blind. My reply to the blind eye was that it has nothing to do with the eye patch since Gray Fox's eyes were fine back then. They reply by saying that I missed the point of a body double theory, that of course Gray Fox will wear an eye patch if he wants to impersonate Big Boss. But no, I got that. I was replying to the Metal Gear Solid 1 reference. Him having a blind eye 2 decades later is no proof that this Big Boss is actually Gray Fox in disguise just because he is coincidentally wearing an eye patch on the same side. Then they talk about something new, the scars unpunished Snake, and how he doesn't have these scars in his future portraits in games like Metal Gear and Metal Gear Solid. Those portraits are of Big Boss many years later. Scars can be healed, especially in the world of Metal Gear. Need I remind you that Big Boss was incinerated by the end of Metal Gear 2, but somehow looks brand new when he briefly appears in Metal Gear Solid 4? Anyways, back to the eye patch. Another theory of theirs was that the eye patch can actually be acting as binoculars, much like the solid eye, to which I replied that not only is the eye patch clearly leather, but that it's even thinner than the solid eye, which is technology from 2 decades later. Their counter-response was this holographic map, saying that this is pretty high-tech, so high-tech eye patches should be possible. Yeah, it is pretty high-tech, but it's pretty freaking big. The point I was making is that the eye patch not only looks quite ordinary, but that it's also very thin. This map device not only looks extraordinary from the get-go, but it's also a pretty good size. So showing me this is not a valid counter-argument. Then they proceed to mention the eye patch's third strap, saying that Big Boss's eye patch usually only has 2. My reply was quite simple. The third strap could be for harsher environments, or it could be a customization feature, and as I mentioned before, sometimes characters slightly change their looks. Their answer to that was that this is yet another amateurish easy way out, unworthy of a true analyst. They also give further evidence by providing this diagram of an existing technology called the Bionic Eye. Okay, whoa, they never mentioned a Bionic Eye the first time around. That's different and certainly a possibility. But yeah, in my previous video, I was countering just the eye patch being binoculars. Now, if the Bionic Eye and the eye patch are somehow working in conjunction, then I can certainly see something happening. But in bringing up the possibility of a Bionic Eye, they have made it less likely that this Big Boss is Gray Fox in disguise or any body double. Their previous theory was that the eye patch is doing all the work, so in proving that the eye patch by itself is a binocular, it would be impossible for this man to be Big Boss, since his right eye was damaged. He would not be able to use the supposed high-tech eye patch. Gray Fox, on the other hand, could, since he still has a good right eye. But now, with this whole Bionic Eye theory, this man could just as easily be the real Big Boss. Perhaps the right eye is now bionic. I've made my point, moving on. Now, they did bring up my mistake thinking that the front of a truck was actually Snake pulling out his binoculars. Yeah, I'll take the hit for that one. It was like 3 AM when I was doing that part of the analysis, so excuse my mistake, folks. But to make up for that, you can see Snake's arm moving here after he finishes using the binocular, very similar to what we've seen in games like Metal Gear Solid 3. As I mentioned in my previous video, the instant switching in and out of items is a trademark gameplay feature of the Metal Gear Solid franchise, and you will notice that the binoculars in Metal Gear Solid 5 zoom in quite similarly to what we have seen in games like Metal Gear Solid 3. Despite having mentioned this in my past video, Python Salkin actually chose not to say anything about the matter, which probably means they have nothing against the argument. Next up, they respond to the argument regarding Snake never being called Big Boss throughout these trailers.
I'm here to get you out, Snake.
They said that the reason for this is that this snake isn't the real Big Boss, but rather Gray Fox in disguise, so they just call him Snake. I responded that the reason that Snake is never called Big Boss is because he wants to cut his affiliation to the US and because he respects the boss too much to tarnish her name in his quest for revenge. They smartly counteracted with this defining scene from Peace Walker.
She betrayed me, Kaz.
She what?
In the end, she put down her gun. And when she did, she rejected her entire life up to that point, including me.
What do you mean?
In giving up her life, she abandoned everything she was as a soldier.
And you consider that betrayal?
I won't make the same choice as her. My future is going to be different.
Then,
yeah, that's right. From now on, call me Big Boss.
Yep, I'll take the hit for that one as well. I rushed to a conclusion far too quickly. But okay, motivations aside, check out this footage from Ground Zeroes. According to their theory, the real Big Boss is the one from Ground Zeroes, and yet, as you guys can see from this Ground Zeroes footage, they still call him Snake, not Big Boss. So the fact that they call him Snake in the Phantom Pain proves nothing in the end. Up next, they talk about a new topic, the shrapnel. They compare these two images, saying that the snake on the left with 3 straps has flattened debris, while the one on the right with 2 straps has pointed debris. He also notes their different hue. These differences have led them to believe that these two could actually be different characters. Well, if you look at Snake on the left from another angle, you can get that same pointed look on the debris. In fact, if you look at Snake on the right from another angle, you can get that same flattened looking debris as well. Different angles make things look different, it's simple. As for the different hue, I don't know, it could be lighting, it could be game changes, who knows. As I've mentioned before, the Fox engine's lighting has made Snake's brown hair look white, so who knows what other crazy shit the engine will do. What I do know for sure is that the two Snake's debris are in reality the same shape. Next, they talk about another new topic, Snake's electronic cigar, which was actually given a mention in Peace Walker. They pointed out how Big Boss says in that conversation that he'll stick with real cigars, that he doesn't like imitations. So their theory is that there's the possibility that this is another character, since the real Big Boss would never use an electronic cigar. While I certainly don't have an explanation for why Snake is using an electronic cigar, I would also say it's far from definitive proof that this Big Boss is some kind of a double or Gray Fox for that matter. I would also like to point out that if this man is trying to be a body double, then why use an electronic cigar instead of a real cigar? Why use something the real Big Boss would never use, as they put it? Last but not least, I would like to talk about the very simple reasons why this Big Boss isn't Gray Fox or some kind of double. Their theory is that Ishmael, who according to them could be Gray Fox, is the one to take over as the Big Boss double, and yet he has no debris popping out of his bandages like Snake here, and he has no missing arm like Snake. They do address the arm a bit, saying simply that Gray Fox acting as a double is simply using a fake prosthetic arm, so a fake arm? Look, the simple fact is, Ishmael, the man they are assuming to be the double, still has his arm, so there's no way for him to get a prosthetic. And if we do pretend for a second that this Big Boss is really Gray Fox in disguise, acting as a double so perfect that he went as far as getting a prosthetic arm and shoving debris inside his head, why miss out on the little details by adding an extra strap, or by rocking a ponytail, or by smoking an electronic cigar rather than what Big Boss would normally smoke, a real cigar, or by giving Snake green eyes rather than blue? Their theories even contradict themselves. Also, the theory that Ishmael is Gray Fox is beginning to seem less likely for me. Isn't it weird that Big Boss doesn't even recognize Ishmael as Gray Fox, despite knowing each other? And if the excuse is that Big Boss was disoriented, then why didn't Ishmael simply say, "It's me, Gray Fox"? Many questions, little answers. Before I take my leave, I would like to point out that these are all my personal thoughts based on what I have witnessed about the game. I certainly respect their thoughts as well, and if you're watching this, Python Falcon, look man, no matter what I say, what I do, you keep doing what you're doing because you obviously love what you do, you know your stuff, and it's great. Now, I may not be a true analyst, as you guys put it, but I would say that part of being a good analyst is knowing when to stop. Thinking too much about the little things can just as easily lead one astray. An analysis suddenly becomes a conspiracy theory before before you know it. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with them. They are fun as hell, but to say that I'm not a true analyst because I don't go as far as doing conspiracy theories, that's pretty low. So forgive me if I'm not considered a true analyst, just an amateur or whatever, but that's fine by me. I'm just a YouTuber. I'm here to make videos for my audience, viewers, subscribers, and supporters, and as long as these people are happy, and as long as I am doing what I love, I could care less whether I'm a true analyst or not. I'm just a simple and proud YouTuber. Anyways, thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to let our nation know in the comments below your thoughts on everything that I've just pointed out. Also, keep in mind, this is probably the last counter-argument video that I'm gonna make, despite what Python Falcon does. It's just not worth my time to keep going back and forth, and I'm not saying this as an insult to Python Falcon. The fact of the matter is, both Python Falcon and I are making theories. That's all they are. So until I get more information, this is where I'm gonna leave things off. Anyways, to be further updated on Metal Gear Solid 5, be sure to join the nation and subscribe to Young Gear. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you very much, and Young out!